It was a nasty surprise to discover that he faced the entire might of the army of Bohemia. 28,000 men against 80,000.
No! No! Alright, Napoleonic Wars Battle for France, 1814. Peace, peace, peace. It is enough to... It's easy. Am I able to...
In October 1813, Napoleon had suffered his heaviest ever defeat at Leipzig, the Battle of the Nations. Surviving French forces, exhausted, sick and demoralized, retreated to the River Rhine and prepared to defend France from invasion. But in November, the armies of the Sixth Coalition paused their advance, and Austrian Foreign Minister Metternich offered peace terms. The Frankfurt...
Oh my gosh. Bro, Napoleon, bro, oh, how is he gonna mess this up? No, oh my, wait. Bro, okay, hold on. We're a minute in, let's...
Proposals would allow Napoleon to keep his throne if France returned to her so-called natural frontiers. It was the best offer Napoleon was likely to get, now that his back was to the wall, and all Europe's great powers were united against him. Even so, he did not accept the terms. He merely agreed to reopen negotiations. To the Allies, and many in France itself, it proved that Napoleon would not listen to reason. The war went...
Napoleon! Just do what the Allies did to you! Just take the peace terms and just betray them later. Oh my gosh.
Went on, and by January 1814, Napoleon's situation looked even worse. Many of his besieged garrisons in the east were starved into surrender. Marshal Davout, with 34,000 men in Hamburg, was now besieged. Denmark, one of France's last allies, was invaded by Bernadotte's Swedish army and made to join the coalition.
Giga Chad Denmark, staying till the very end. Nice.
French troops evacuated the Netherlands, which reasserted its independence after nearly 20 years of French control. In Italy, Eugene's army faced a new enemy, Joachim Murat, King of Naples, now marching north with 30,000 men to honor his new alliance with the Sixth Coalition.
No! Murat! Oh my god, no! Oh! No, I feel betrayed! I feel betrayed! This guy was like, easily, arguably, like, my favorite marshal! Oh my gosh! Oh, come on! Wow! Oh, wow! Oh my... I'm actually heartbroken. You don't understand. I literally just felt a pain, like stab my heart. I'm not even kidding. This is actually heartbreaking.
In Paris, Napoleon responded to the crisis with a series of extreme measures. Property taxes doubled, state salaries and pensions suspended, 300,000 new conscripts called up, from a country already exhausted by 20 years of war.
You know, I'm honestly surprised that Napoleon is able to get all these conscripts, but, you know, it really goes to show you how much of a juggernaut France was at this time.
He ordered the release of Pope Pius, under French house arrest for the last 5 years, to try to shore up his support in Italy. He even agreed to release Fernando, the Bourbon King of Spain, to take up his throne in exchange for peace between France and Spain, a condition that Fernando was in no position to honor. But these concessions were too little, far too late. In January, two coalition armies crossed the Rhine into France: Blücher's army of Silesia and Schwarzenberg's army of Bohemia. Outnumbered French forces in their path could only fall back. On the 25th of January, Napoleon said farewell to his wife and son at the Tuileries Palace before leaving for the front. He would never see either of them again. With just 70,000
Oh
men,
my gosh, this is really awful, Napoleon. You know, it really blows my mind how Napoleon wasn't even defeated. Napoleon lost himself this whole war. Okay, like he wasn't even defeated. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's way too many times where he actually, all the way ranging from the Russia campaign. I mean, there's so many times where he could have won, honestly.
he faced odds of 4-1. Most of his troops were raw conscripts, some without uniforms, many just learning how to hold a musket. But for the first time in years, Napoleon's army was so small that he'd be able to exercise direct command over all its movements. The result would be one of the most audacious and brilliant campaigns in history.
Really? If the enemy are foolish enough to cross the Rhine, I will march to meet them, then you will see the meaning of the word debacle.
The battle for France would be fought east of Paris, mostly across Champagne, a flat region divided by the rivers Marne and Seine and their tributaries. In late January, fields were dusted with snow and roads quickly turned to mud. Napoleon learned that the coalition armies were widely scattered, with part of Blücher's army near Napoleon's old college at Brienne. The emperor advanced rapidly, hoping to trap and destroy part of Blücher's army. But after a hard day's fighting that cost both sides 3,000 casualties, Blücher was able to retreat towards Schwarzenberg's army. That evening, Napoleon was nearly skewered by a charging Cossack, saved only by General Gorgo's good shooting.
Okay, General Gorgo. Damn, you put all your stats into marksmanship, man.
As Napoleon tried to work out the enemy's movements, Blücher, heavily reinforced by Schwarzenberg, made a surprise attack at La Rothière.
Ooh.
Allied troops advanced through swirling snow to assault the village, defiantly held by young French conscripts. One was so inexperienced that Marshal Marmont had to personally show him how to load his musket during the battle.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Bro, shout out to the marshals for not betraying Napoleon. Yeah, I still can't get over that whole Murat thing. I can't get over that.
By late afternoon, Raeder's Bavarian corps was falling on Napoleon's flank. Heavily outnumbered, Napoleon had no option but to retreat, having lost 5,000 casualties and 73 guns abandoned in the thick mud.
Oh boy.
The Allies' frontal attacks meant their losses were greater, but by combining their armies, they defeated Napoleon on French soil for the first time. Believing Napoleon would now retreat towards Paris, the Allies decided to advance along two routes to ease pressure on the roads. Blücher would take a northern route along the Marne. Schwarzenberg would follow the Seine. But dividing their armies again would play right into Napoleon's hands.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, come on, dude. This is like Napoleon's like oldest trick in the book. Like, have your enemies divide their armies. Like, come on now. Like, really? Come on. The study of it has given me greater idea of his genius than any other. The Duke of Wellington, wow.
After 2 days to reorganize, Napoleon continued his retreat to Nogent, where he learned that the Allies had split their armies. Not only that, they were advancing at different speeds. The aggressive Blücher racing ahead, while the more cautious Schwarzenberg lagged behind. Leaving Oudinot and Victor to guard the Seine bridges and delay Schwarzenberg, Napoleon raced north through mud and rain with 30,000 men. The army of Silesia was strung out on the march, oblivious to the danger it was in.
Oh!
First, Napoleon fell on General Ossouffiev's Russian 9th Corps at Chaumont, destroying it, taking its commander and 2,000 men prisoner. The next morning, he marched on General Osten-Sacken's force near Montmiral. This was a much larger force, with 2 infantry and 1 cavalry corps, and was expecting support from York's Prussian 1st Corps.
Thanks to a bed and breakfast.
But the Prussians were late, and Sacken's troops could not withstand the French onslaught. At this desperate hour, the Emperor's elite Old Guard were no longer held back, but were often thrown into the thick of the fighting.
Oh, the Imperial Guard! Okay, the Imperial Guard is showing up, alright!
By the end of the day, Napoleon had inflicted another 3,500 casualties.
Oh my
twice
God!
his own losses, and the Allies were in rapid retreat. Napoleon had ordered Marshal MacDonald to cut off the enemy's escape by seizing the Marne Bridge at Château Thierry. But York's Prussians got there first. The next day, Napoleon could only batter their rear guard as the enemy fled across the Marne, destroying the bridge behind them. Sending Marshal Mortier to rebuild the bridge and continue the pursuit, Napoleon doubled back to rejoin Marmont, who had been left to keep watch on Blücher. Napoleon attacked at Vauchamp, using General Grouchy's cavalry to outflank Blücher's army, which was soon in headlong retreat.
Oh my gosh! I have hope! I have hope! Bro, oh my gosh. Dude, what the heck? How do you mess this one up, Napoleon? Come on.
A merciless French pursuit inflicted 6,000 Prussian and Russian casualties. Napoleon lost just 600 men.
Oh my gosh! That's madness, man!
Napoleon had taken on an enemy army almost twice his size, and beaten it 4 times in just 6 days. Blücher had lost an estimated 15,000 casualties in battle, and another 15,000 in smaller engagements as stragglers or deserters. For now, the army of Silesia had been scattered and neutralized. But in the south, Marshals Victor and Oudinot had not been able to prevent Schwarzenberg's army of Bohemia from crossing the Seine in 3 places. Austrian troops were now just 40 miles from Paris. Leaving Mortier and Marmont to keep watch on Blücher, Napoleon raced south. Schwarzenberg, alarmed by news of Blücher's defeat and of Napoleon's approach, immediately ordered a retreat. It was too late.
He knows.
For Wittgenstein's advance guard, routed at Montmain with 2,000 casualties.
Oh my gosh! I mean, he's just like, just washing them off, man.
Napoleon sent Victor's 2nd Corps to seize the bridge at Montereau, but was so infuriated by its slow progress that he sacked Victor and gave his corps to General Gérard. The next day, at the Battle of Montereau, the French drove the Allied Württemberg Corps back across the river, with 30% losses. According to some accounts, the Emperor sighted the French cannon himself, as he had at Lodi 18 years before.
Yo, yeah, bro, yeah, no. Napoleon's a legend, hands down.
Napoleon had the Allies on the run. But how long could it last?
Yeah, that is true.
Even as fighting continued, negotiations between France and the coalition reopened at Châtillon-sur-Seine on the 5th of February. The Allied terms were now more severe. A return to France's frontiers of 1791, which meant the additional loss of Belgium, a humiliation that Napoleon refused to accept. Instead, he tried to revive the Frankfurt proposals, hoping to play for time and to split the coalition, whose war aims varied from Britain's hard line to Austria's more ambiguous position. But this hope was thwarted by British Foreign Secretary Lord Castlereagh. On the 1st of March, he persuaded the Allies to sign the Treaty of Chaumont. In it, Russia, Prussia, Austria and Great Britain agreed to keep 150,000 troops in the field and not to negotiate separately
I never thought
with France, while Britain added the sweetener of a £5 million subsidy to be shared among the Allies. The treaty's secret articles specified common war aims, including the future independence of the German states, Switzerland and Italy, while Spain was to be returned to the Bourbons and Holland to the House of Orange.
Oh wow, yeah, Castlereagh. I've actually heard of Castlereagh. That guy was legendary.
The four powers even agreed that once they'd defeated Napoleon, they'd form a 20-year defensive alliance to maintain peace in Europe. A sign of their newfound commitment to each other.
Okay.
A split in the coalition had been Napoleon's last best hope for a favourable peace. That was gone. And news from across the country was bleak. French cities were surrendering to the Allies without a fight. Nancy, Dijon and Mâcon had all fallen. In the south, Wellington defeated Marshal Soult at Orthez, forcing him to fall back on Toulouse. 2 weeks later, as British troops approached the city of Bordeaux, it declared loyalty to France's Bourbon kings. The mayor himself rode out to greet the British, bearing a white cockade, the sign of Bourbon allegiance. Napoleon...
Oh my gosh! France! Come on! Oh no, dude. Napoleon's actually like doing something. He's actually doing something, man. Oh, this is oh my god, this is so annoying. This is actually so annoying. Oh wow, France, why didn't you fight harder? If only France fought harder. Yo, I sound like Mustache Man from World War II. No, but seriously though, like, oh wow.
Napoleon's hope for a nation in arms to resist the Allies had not materialized. Allied troops, particularly Cossacks, often robbed French civilians and committed some atrocities. French peasants took revenge when they could, but there was no guerrilla war to mirror what French troops had encountered in Spain or Russia. The chief desire among ordinary French people was for peace, at almost any price. Any talk of Napoleon's defeat in late February was premature. The French Emperor was driving Schwarzenberg's army of Bohemia before him, even though it was twice his size. But Schwarzenberg scrambled to safety behind the river Aube.
Go and defeat Blucher. Go and defeat Blucher, man.
Napoleon knew he had to land another decisive blow soon, so turned his attention back to Blucher.
Yes!
After an aborted attempt to join forces with Schwarzenberg, Blucher had decided to resume his advance on Paris, gathering reinforcements en route, and with only Marmont and Mortier's weak corps to oppose him. Leaving Marshal MacDonald in command in the south, Napoleon set off to intercept Blucher, covering 60 miles in 3 days along terrible roads choked with mud.
What is the big deal with mud? I know it's difficult to move in mud, but let's be real, that's not really bad. That's, frankly speaking, not really awful compared to like summer weather or like winter weather.
You're gonna have to get
Napoleon's approach, Blucher retreated across the Marne, burning the bridges behind him. 24 hours later, they'd been rebuilt by French engineers, and Napoleon was poised to crush Blucher against the Aisne River, because the major crossing point at Soissons was held by a Franco-Polish garrison.
Oh!
But after just a day's fighting, the garrison commander at Soissons tamely surrendered.
Oh my, no way. No way, bro. No way. No way. Oh my gosh. It's like no one else has the tenacity of Napoleon. No one else has the tenacity of Napoleon. Really? Oh my gosh. No way he actually surrendered. What? Oh my god, bruh. Wow, that is such a... Wow. Wow. You know what? I'm blaming this on Napoleon's generals and his marshals. I mean, I could kind of blame him as well for losing this whole thing, but honestly, I'm kind of putting all my blame on the generals and marshals. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. Like all the way back to the Russian campaign. I mean, bro, his commanders, man. Like I don't know what. They're just not. They're not in. You know, they're impressive, but wow, this is just such a letdown. This is wow, such a disappointment. What the heck, my man?
Allowing Blucher to escape. Napoleon continued his pursuit across the Aisne, still hoping to cut off the army of Silesia. But at Chaumont, he encountered Russian troops in a strong defensive position. The Russians fought stubbornly. The French finally forced the enemy to withdraw, but only at the cost of 6,000 casualties, including many irreplaceable veterans from Napoleon's guard.
Ah!
Napoleon pushed on to Laon. But by now, Blucher had concentrated his forces, 98,000 troops in all, and outnumbered Napoleon 2-1. French attacks were repulsed, while Marmont's corps was caught off guard by a late Allied counterattack and routed. Napoleon was lucky to avoid a much heavier defeat. Blucher, usually aggressive to the point of recklessness, was unwell and had been told Napoleon's army was twice as big as it was, leading him to act with unusual caution. Laon was a heavy blow to Napoleon. 6,500 casualties he could not afford. Undaunted, he fell back to Soissons, and after a brief moment to reorganize, he marched on the city of Reims, which had just fallen to Saint-Priest's Russian corps. In a whirlwind assault, Napoleon retook the city. Saint-Priest himself was mortally wounded, his corps routed. Meanwhile, in the south, Schwarzenberg had resumed his offensive as soon as he found out Napoleon had gone north. In heavy fighting, he'd driven Oudinot and MacDonald back from the River Aube. 5 days later, the Allies had recaptured Troyes, as MacDonald retreated behind the River Seine.
Bro, I know I'm not saying anything, but what is there to say? I'm just watching this, just thinking to myself, like, Napoleon has them on the edge. He has them on the edge. I just don't get it. How could this possibly go wrong? But if what I say is correct, it's not really him that messes this up. It's more like his subordinate that messes this up for him.
Now, after 4 days to rest and reorganize his battered army, Napoleon was coming south once more. Schwarzenberg, emboldened by news of Napoleon's defeat at Laon, decided that this time he would stand and fight. Napoleon advanced on Arcis-sur-Aube, ignoring reports that the enemy was not retreating as he believed, but gathering for battle.
Uh-oh.
As heavy fighting broke out, Napoleon still believed he faced only the enemy rearguard. It was a nasty surprise to discover that he faced the entire might of the army of Bohemia. 28,000 men against 80,000.
No! No! Oh, yeah, that's nasty. That is nasty.
In desperate fighting, Napoleon personally rallied fleeing troops and exposed himself to enemy fire, having his horse killed under him by an exploding shell.
You know those people were purposely aiming for Napoleon, bruh. Like, I always said in my reactions throughout this whole series, these people, bruh, like all these marshals and generals dying from cannonballs, like, no way. Like, these people were purposely aiming for these people, bruh. Like, no way, bruh.
But the odds were too great.
Oh yeah, 100%.
At the end of the second day, Napoleon was forced to order the retreat.
Wow, his clothes were pierced. Wow, none reached.
Napoleon
Wow.
believed his army was now too weak to take on the Allies directly, so he decided to change strategy. He would march into the rear of the Allied armies, join up with some of his isolated garrisons, and cut the enemy's lines of communication.
I still don't get why he would. What, dude? Why would you isolate your troops in a time like this? In a time where you need veterans, in a time where you need manpower. Like, you are Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, you are Napoleon Bonaparte. You can take on armies that are bigger than you. Okay, so you should be gathering all your troops to do this. Like, I have paid attention to all of these battles, and the main reason why Napoleon just every time he lost, right, wasn't really because he was defeated most of the time. It was just because he didn't have enough troops to actually, like pull off that final, victory, right? I mean, why? Oh, dude, that's such a big blunder, dude. I honestly, you know what? New take. Napoleon probably would have won if he didn't have freaking garrison cities. Bloody hell, my throat hurts. But Napoleon probably would have won if he didn't have those stupid garrison cities. What was that? All those cities in Poland, Germany, 130,000 troops. Napoleon could have easily used those 130,000 troops. I pulled a miracle. He's done it before. He's done it many times. I mean, look at what you're doing now. Like, come on. Like, oh my gosh. All right, man. Let me stop. My throat is like itching me. I'm just flabbergasted about why Napoleon would. Let's continue.
Forcing them to abandon their advance on Paris. But the Allies, until now always one step behind Napoleon, had just received crucial information. Talleyrand, the most brilliant French diplomat of the age, and the most slippery. He'd served France's monarchy, the Revolution, then Napoleon, until in 1807 he fell out irrevocably with the Emperor over foreign policy. He now believed that Napoleon was dragging France into ruin, and worked behind the scenes to ensure his downfall.
Of course, I'm not even surprised at this point. I'm just not even surprised. Wow, Napoleon, your subordinates are just wow.
From Paris, he wrote to the Russian Emperor Alexander at Allied headquarters, informing him that in the capital, support for Napoleon was crumbling, and the city's defences had been completely neglected. He urged the Allies to march immediately on Paris, without allowing Napoleon to distract them. Talleyrand's information was confirmed when the Allies intercepted a report from Napoleon's chief of police, General Savary, meant for the Emperor. The treasury, arsenals and powder stores are empty. We are completely at the end of our resources. The population is discouraged and discontented, wishing peace at any price. As Napoleon advanced on Saint-Dizier, the Allies sent General Witzengerode and 10,000 cavalry to harass his army and to screen.
Peace, 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 peace. You know, it blows my mind how people can be like, oh, yeah, I'm all for this whole war thing. But then, you know, as soon as it hits them, they're like, oh, I need peace. Like, I noticed that. Like, any war that reaches anyone's soil, make them fight that war long enough on their soil. And honestly, they could be like the most tenacious people and they'll just want peace.
Their own movements. Then began their march on Paris. At Fère-Champenoise, they collided with Marmont and Mortier's corps, advancing to join Napoleon. An entire National Guard division, 5,000 men, was virtually wiped out as the marshals suffered a crushing defeat.
No, not the National Guard! Not them! Golly, man, this is awful!
Napoleon feared that the fall of Paris would be a fatal blow to his regime. His political authority and ability to wage war might not recover. So, when he received news of the Allies' movements, he tore up his plans and ordered a forced march back to Paris, intending to lead its defense in person. Napoleon's wife and son were evacuated from the capital, along with most of his ministers. His brother, Joseph, the ex-king of Spain, was in charge of the city's defenses, but had done little. Paris
Joseph is trash at military stuff, man.
was awash with rumors of treachery and defeat. Marmont and Mortier were able to reach Paris before the Allies, adding their troops to the garrison. It now totaled 37,000 men, including some hardened veterans of the Guard, but many more young conscripts, while a third were part-time soldiers of the National Guard. The Allies had 120,000 seasoned troops outside the city, and given the urgency of taking Paris before Napoleon could intervene, their elite guards and grenadier divisions would lead the way.
Oh my goodness, man.
On the 30th of March, they began their assault from the north. Heavy fighting raged throughout the day. The city's defenders fought bravely, inflicting several thousand casualties on the advancing enemy. But defeat was inevitable.
Yep.
That night, to save Paris from destruction, Marshal Marmont agreed to surrender the city, on condition the garrison was permitted to leave with its weapons. At the Hôtel des Invalides, the 71-year-old Marshal Serrurier oversaw the burning of 1,400 flags and standards captured from France's enemies, as well as Frederick the Great's sword and sash, so they would not fall into Allied hands.
Hey! Sassy, man. You sassy. Nah, bro, that is some next level pettiness.
Napoleon was just 15 miles from Paris when he was informed of the city's surrender. He sat with his head in his hands for 15 minutes.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, really? I'm disappointed in the French people. I'm honestly disappointed in the French people. They just really were not cut out for it. They just really were not cut out for this whole war. Wow. I mean, like, I see so many people, they love to say, oh, but, France, before World War II, France had an impressive military record, and they do. But, like, no. I can't even call the French people tenacious. I can't. The Russians were tenacious when Napoleon invaded. The Spanish, oh my God, they were different breed. But like, Napoleon actually had a chance here. Like, this wasn't all gloomy and everything is over like I originally thought. It's literally just that the French people failed Napoleon. Honestly, you could quote what he said. When I say the French people, I mean his subordinates. His population. I mean, dude, wow. The fate of Moscow.
On the 31st of March 1814, France's enemies marched into Paris for the first time since the 100 Years' War. Parisian crowds cheered the three Allied monarchs, bringers of peace. Everyone in Paris was suddenly a royalist once more.
I'm shaking my head so hard right now. Really? Disgusting. I'm honestly disgusted by this. I'm so disgusted by this. This was Napoleon, the man who literally, like, did so much for your country, bro. And you switch up. Wow. This is honestly disgusting. I'm not gonna lie, this is pure disgust.
Above all, they cheered for Emperor Alexander of Russia, now hailed as Europe's savior.
Europe's savior? Europe's savior? What did he save? If anything, Napoleon's Europe's savior. That man's legacy. Well, this is hindsight, but let's not use hindsight for a second here. Okay, look at everything that he did for France. I mean, wow.
Don Cossacks bivouacked on the Champs-Élysées. Allied troops generally behaved well. "35 miles away, Napoleon was at Fontainebleau with 36,000 men, all of them hungry and exhausted after their 100-mile forced march. Nevertheless, Napoleon began planning an immediate advance on Paris. But for the first time, he faced
Building your online
unanimous opposition from his ministers and marshals,
Of
including
course.
Ney, MacDonald,
Of course. CEE face of course, dude. Of course. They're not cut out for this. They're not cut out for this, man. Oh my gosh, man. Dude, poor Napoleon, dude. If only he actually had more tenacious people, bro. Oh my gosh. Of course. I'm actually boiling right now. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Oudinot, and Berthier. They reminded him of his oath to act for the good of France. He accused them of disloyalty, acting only to save themselves. They told him the war was lost, and he must abdicate in favor of his son if possible. On the 4th of April, Marshal Marmont surrendered his entire corps to the coalition, which was marched over to the enemy lines against the wishes of many of its officers and men. This was a
Against the wishes of many of its officers and men. Why weren't they promoted? Damn. Why weren't they promoted? And this is so hard to watch. I'm not gonna lie. This is making me very vexed. This is making me super vexed right now.
devastating blow to Napoleon, and encouraged the Allies to reject his offer of a conditional abdication in favor of his son. 2 days later, he abdicated without conditions. The Allied powers having proclaimed that the Emperor Napoleon is the only obstacle to the re-establishment of peace in Europe, the Emperor Napoleon, faithful to his oath, declares that he renounces, for himself and his heirs, the thrones of France and Italy, and that there is no personal sacrifice, including his life, that he is not ready to make in the interests of France. Napoleon's abdication was formalized by the Treaty of Fontainebleau, by which he was allowed to keep the title of emperor, become sovereign of the small island of Elba, and retain a bodyguard of 400 men. News came too late to prevent Wellington's attack on Toulouse, leading to a costly and pointless battle, with more than 7,000 casualties. The night after his abdication, Napoleon tried to commit suicide, using the poison that had been made for him in Russia, in case of capture. But it had lost its potency, and he survived. 2 weeks later,
Shaking my head, dude. Shaking my head. Shaking my head. Ugh. It would appears that it would appears that despite French and their good record, their good military record, they're not really hard. You know, they're not like hard people. You know, I have French people that watch my videos. I do. But I'm not really going to retract my statement. If you take personal offense to my statement, oh well.
Napoleon bade farewell to his old guard at Fontainebleau Palace, and began his journey into exile.
I have been wrong, maybe in my plans. I have done harm in war, but it is all like a dream.
The Napoleonic Wars, which had raged on land and sea for 11 years, seemed finally at an end. The death toll is unknown, but historians estimate that 2 to 3 million lives were lost across Europe. Most soldiers died not in battle, but from disease.
Yeah, of course.
Many thousands were left maimed and disfigured. For most of this period, Napoleon was master of Europe, imposing treaties on humbled enemies, redrawing frontiers, overthrowing old regimes, and making new kings. He was the last figure in history to combine total political power with frontline military genius, in the mold of Alexander and Caesar. But it seemed,
Bro, this dude is much better than them. Although I know he was inspired by them, but he actually turned out much better than them.
Napoleon's reign was to end in abject military defeat. However, exile on Elba did not prove to Napoleon's taste. In less than 10 months, he would return to France to fight one last great campaign to reclaim his throne.
Battle of Waterloo. Now that is hype. That is hype. Look, man, if you're new to my channel, right, and you like what I have to say in my reactions, make sure you subscribe. Number one. Number two, go check out my other reactions. This is like the ending of my Napoleon in chronological order, aside from Waterloo, of course. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the Napoleonic Wars. I love it, you know? But, you know, even though I watched these videos and I learned a lot about the Napoleonic Wars, you know, there's still much more to learn, you know? So I'm not like an abject, like super Napoleonic history buff, at least not yet. But this is excellent. Make sure to like the video, you know, and stay tuned for more.